Hey everyone, this is my video on conference realignment. Even though conference realignment will be affecting all collegiate sports, I'm going to be focusing specifically on college football as that's right around the corner. So, I first want to make a statement on the Pac 12, the Pacific 12 Conference. As an Oregon fan, the Pac 12 has really been a fun conference to watch, especially last year. You had a lot of quarterback talent, Bo Nix and Michael Penix in particular, but also you had DJ Uiagalelei at Oregon State and Cam Ward at Washington State. So there were a lot of great quarterbacks in the Pac 12 last year. I'm going to be sad to see the Pac 12 go. And Oregon State and Washington State are still technically in the Pac 12. I'll have more on that later in this video. And now we're going to start the real conference realignment talk. So, this is going to be kind of an overview. I'm going to go through conference by conference and say which teams are entering, which teams are exiting, and then for some conferences, I'll have additional notes. But this isn't going to be like a comprehensive video, it's going to be more of an overview. So, that being said, let's jump right in. So we're starting with the SEC, which started it all. Texas and Oklahoma going to the SEC was what kicked off conference realignment. As you can see on this slide, there's going to be no divisions in the SEC for the first time starting this year. Teams entering the conference are the University of Oklahoma and the University of Texas, and there are no teams exiting as going into 2024. So each SEC team that was in the conference prior to 2024, so excluding Texas and Oklahoma, will play either Texas or Oklahoma, but not both. So that is something to keep an eye on. Like, for instance, my favorite college football team, Auburn. I haven't seen their schedule yet, but they'll play either Texas or Oklahoma, but not both. Same for teams like Alabama, Georgia, LSU, all the teams you think of as being in the SEC. And it is going to be kind of weird having Texas and Oklahoma in the SEC, but I think we'll get used to this. And I think it'll be very interesting to watch college football this coming season as this conference realignment kind of shakes out, and we'll see how it is. I mean, it's going to be interesting for sure, and it's going to be different, but it's not necessarily going to be a bad thing. And next we'll be moving on to the Big 10. So, the Big 10 also will not have divisions anymore starting in 2024, and there's a number of teams entering. We have the University of Oregon. That's my second favorite team, so I'm excited for them starting in the Big Ten, except this is going to be a tough conference, I think, so we'll see how they do. High expectations for Oregon going into the season. I might do a record prediction video for Oregon later on this summer if I have time. The University of Southern California, USC, UCLA, and Washington University. So we have basically four West Coast teams joining a predominantly Midwest conference. So this is going to make for an interesting change. Obviously, you have the powerhouses of Michigan and Ohio State, but it'll be interesting to see how these West Coast teams compete against that caliber of opponent. And I think my prediction is we'll see at least one of these four teams, if not two, in the 12-team expanded college football playoff in late 2024 in December. So, moving on to the Atlantic Coast Conference, the ACC is kind of on a decline, I would say, but they did still pick up some teams. They did still pick up some teams. The University of California, that's Cal, SMU, which is Southern Methodist University, and Stanford. And there's no teams exiting as of yet. It looks like maybe Florida State will be trying to exit going into 2025, but as of right now, there's no teams that are exiting. This has been a weaker conference the last few years, but it'll be interesting to see two West Coast teams. I think it's kind of funny. We have a conference called the Atlantic Coast Conference, and now you're going to have West Coast teams. So it'll be interesting to see how the scheduling shakes out, but also SMU moving to the ACC. That could be interesting for other sports, but also they've been fairly good the last few years in football, so it'll be interesting to see how SMU competes against teams like Clemson and Florida State. And next, we have the Big 12. So the Big 12 took a number of other former Pac 12 teams: the University of Arizona, Arizona State, the University of Colorado, and the University of Utah. However, they lost two of their premier teams in Oklahoma and Texas, both of which are heading to the SEC next year, as mentioned previously. This will be an interesting conference because I think a lot of these teams, when they were in the Pac 12, were maybe a little bit overlooked. Colorado has Deion Sanders. I expect them to improve this season. I don't know how much. I don't think they'll make the playoff, but maybe they can get in the 7-9 win realm. Arizona was a big surprise. They racked off, I think, like 5, 6, 7 wins, something like that, at the end of last season. And they were a bit of a surprise in the Pac 12, so they could surprise some people in the Big 12 this coming season. And then Arizona State, not really sure what to expect from them, but they've had some good seasons as well. So it'll be interesting to see how these teams stack up in a Big 12 that's pretty wide open with Oklahoma and Texas leaving. And then the American Athletic Conference, not much to talk about here, but Army West Point, who used to be an FBS Independent, is joining the American Athletic. So they'll actually be in the same conference as Navy now, which is interesting because even though obviously those two are huge rivals, they haven't been in the same conference. I don't know if they've ever been in the same conference. I know in basketball they are, but um, so it'll be interesting to see how Army fits into the American Athletic, and I mean, they've looked good the last few seasons. They've been a good team. I mean, obviously they always have the run game, but they've been a tough out, and they've taken. I think they took two teams that went pretty far. I think it was like Oklahoma and then one other one 2 years ago, a big name school to overtime and almost beat them. So they're no joke. And then no teams exiting the AAC. There are teams like UAB, UTSA, who just joined last season, but those teams are going into their second season in the conference. And then I just wanted to note Conference USA because, hey, Kennesaw State, congratulations! They're entering the football bowl subdivision, the FBS, which I think of as Division 1A in college football. It's where you have the teams that can make bowls and compete for a college football playoff berth. So I think it's great that Kennesaw State is joining the FBS. I don't know a whole lot about Kennesaw State, but I think it's always good to have more teams in the FBS. So, congrats to the Kennesaw State Owls and good luck. I don't know what maybe we can expect from them in year one, but going forward, it's going to be interesting to see how they stack up. And maybe they'll move to a different conference. I don't know, but we'll see. So all the other conferences will have the same teams in 2024. And a note here, the two remaining Pac 12 teams, Oregon State and Washington State, I mentioned them earlier. They'll play some former Pac 12 teams, but they'll play a Mountain West schedule for the majority of their season. So they'll be playing teams like Boise State, Utah State, and Colorado State, teams like them. And for a list of teams by conference, I recommend going to cbssports.com or using the CBS Sports app. I'm not sponsored by CBS Sports, but I do use the CBS Sports app, and for this video, I use CBSSports.com a lot for the research. So if you're wondering, if you're like, oh, I watched the video, but I'm still not really sure, because again, in this video, I didn't go and mention like all the teams in each conference. So if you're wondering who's in what conference, I would recommend going to CBSSports.com or using the CBS Sports app because that's my go to and it's fantastic. And finally, a quick note on FBS Independents. So, if you're not super familiar with FBS Independents, I know Notre Dame is the team that probably comes to mind for a lot of football fans. FBS Independents are teams that are not part of a conference, so they can schedule against whoever they want. Notre Dame has been an FBS Independent for a long time, and they're well known for it. And they're really the best one. I mean, in terms of winning, they haven't really won uh, major championships, but they've gone further than other teams. So FBS Independents can schedule as many teams as want to play them in the 12-week college football season, and the three remaining FBS Independents. You're not going to see Army, not Navy. You're not going to see Army on this list anymore. But the three remaining FBS Independents are, you still see Notre Dame here. The University of Connecticut, UConn, they're still an independent in football. And the University of Massachusetts, that's UMass, the Minutemen. So those are the three FBS independents. And yeah, so those are the teams that are still not in a conference despite conference realignment. And if you enjoyed this video, please consider liking and subscribing. Down in the right-hand corner, you can see the Oregon Ducks. I have high expectations for them in the coming season. I hope they do well. I hope Auburn at least makes a bowl game. That would be great too. And yeah, if you enjoyed this video, please think about subscribing. Give this video a like because that helps it spread to more people. And I might do a Oregon Ducks record prediction later in the summer. If I do, it'll be up on an end screen right about now, so you can check that out. And yeah, thanks for watching. Martin out.